Hey everyone, I'm the Magic Illumineer, and welcome back to my little corner of magic and wonder on the internet where I discuss Disney Lorcana. I'm very much looking forward to continuing this mini-series that I've been going through by reviewing the different themes and synergies within the different ink colors in Lorcana's first chapter. I'm going to be continuing to go through each ink in alphabetical order as I have been, discussing the different thematic elements with the cards, including combos and also synergies with the other ink colors they can combine with. And in today's video, I'm going to be going through Ruby. All right, let's start talking about Ruby. If you want to remove something from the board, it would be hard to find a much better choice than Ruby cards, except for maybe perhaps Steel, but we'll get to that later. Ruby has a lot of different ways to deal with opponents' characters, both through challenges and character abilities, as well as through action and item cards. The first thing that really needs to be discussed here with regards to Ruby, though, is the number of cards that are focused on challenging opponents' characters. Let's start by examining Mulan Imperial Soldier. Mulan's lead by example ability reads, during your turn, when this character banishes another character in a challenge, your other characters get +1 lore this turn. Naturally, if you're playing Mulan, you'll want to use her to challenge your opponent's characters as often as possible to increase your lore generation significantly. Aladdin Heroic Outlaw has an ability that triggers in the same way. His Daring Exploit ability reads, during your turn, whenever this character challenges and banishes another character in a challenge, then you gain 2 lore and each opponent loses 2 lore. These two cards create very strong combos with both Fan the Flames and LeFou Instigator, as they allow you to ready your characters again and challenge multiple characters in a turn to trigger that ability multiple times. Some other characters that are designed to be challenging your opponent's characters are all of the cards with the Reckless keyword, really. Some notable ones include Gaston, Arrogant Hunter, and Maui, Hero to All. The interesting thing about these character cards is that they have no ability to generate lore. You can quest with them and they will generate nothing. These cards have been designed typically with high strength and lower willpower numbers, and they're clearly not intended to last long in battle, but they can under the right circumstances. They're generally designed to trade up, so to speak, by challenging a card that would typically cost more or be of higher value to banish it while making use of the high strength value associated with these reckless cards. The last method I wanted to talk about is regarding Ruby's ability to remove opposing characters is the use of items, actions, and abilities of some characters. There are some items that offer conditional options for removal of opposing characters, such as the Poisoned Apple and the Sword of Truth. The apple has the ability to banish itself in order to exert a chosen character. However, if the chosen character is a princess, then the character is instead banished. With the Sword of Truth, you can banish it to just banish a chosen villain character. I feel as though these cards are too conditional to run regularly in a deck, but they do offer some interesting tech against certain archetypes that may end up being popular in certain playgroups and therefore may become more valuable to you. Meanwhile, there are action cards such as Dragonfire that offer to banish a chosen character, or there's Be Prepared, which banishes all characters, including your own, from play. They're rather straightforward, high-costed options to remove one or several characters from play. And lastly, I do want to make mention of Maleficent Dragon, which is Dragonfire with a character's body associated with it. It's a very high cost card with the ability to remove a threat from the opponent's field and a big body for them to deal with afterwards, which could be a huge tempo swing. While the main focus of Ruby does appear to be banishing your opponent's characters, there is one mechanic I did want to make mention of and discuss, and that's lore stealing. This is a mechanic that's not quite exclusive to Ruby, thanks to Steal from the Rich coming out in Emerald, but the majority of lore stealing options do appear to be in Ruby. I've discussed these lore stealing cards in my previous videos, and they're quite interesting. Cards like Tangle and Rapunzel letting her hair down will both make your opponents lose 1 lore when they come into play, as will Aladdin Street Rat. Now, Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, as mentioned previously, does function differently from these previous cards I just mentioned. His ability triggers when he challenges and banishes a character, and it not only makes your opponent lose 2 lore, but you also gain 2 lore out of it. So this mechanic can be very frustrating to deal with, and I'm curious to see if there's going to be continued support for it, and I really hope there is because I like how this mechanic functions. With regard to theme, the Lorcana website has the following to say about Ruby. Ruby Glimmers are daring. They use their speed and bravery to defy the odds. They are often warriors, explorers, and daredevils. And that's all they say. Well, Ruby certainly has its fair share of warrior themed cards. You have Aladdin, Maui, Captain Hook, Donald, Gaston, Mulan. Yeah, the list just goes on and on. A lot of good examples there. As for explorers, on the other hand, well, I'm a little less certain about that one. Moana, perhaps, I think make fit the bill here, but that's not really saying much. Maybe we'll see more on that in the future. Lastly, Daredevil is a certainly interesting descriptor to use for Ruby Glimmers. There's the literal Daredevil in Ruby, which is Goofy Daredevil. I'd also argue that Peter Pan Fearless Fighter qualifies here for his artwork and his fearless nature. In the art, he seems to be diving off the crow's nest on Hook's ship, presumably going in for an attack. So that's kind of cool. And I think that would qualify as a Daredevilish nature. Lastly, I did want to also talk about the art for some of these Ruby cards. Similarly to all the other colors discussed so far, Ruby uses a lot of its natural color, which would in this case would be shades of red, which work very well for a lot of these characters' aggressive natures. Some notable examples here are Taka, the Burning One by Camille Merzin, and Gaston Arrogant Hunter by Matthew Robert Davies. However, my favorite art in Ruby would probably be one of Aladdin Heroic Outlaw or Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor, both by Nicholas Cole. Both of these pieces of art, they just show off the heroic nature of the characters. There's just something about the flowing cloaks that's also very appealing to me, and I'm a big fan of both of these to the point where I'm actually struggling to choose one over the other, so I'm going to say it's a tie for both of them. Okay, standard disclaimer here to start off. My intention with discussing the various combinations and synergies with the other ink colors is not a focus on the strongest combos. I'm looking for fun interactions and choices you can make while you go on your search to find your own favorite color combination. I'm just here to help point out some cool things that you can do. Once again, I'm going to be going down the list alphabetically, and I'm going to be starting with Amber. While revisiting the Amber Ruby combo that I discussed in my first video in this series, I realized my opinions on this combo haven't really changed much, despite the full set being spoiled at this point. There's still lots of different removal options to consider that also double up and provide villain synergies, like Maleficent Dragon and Gaston Arrogant Hunter to synergize with Hades King of Olympus. There's also princess synergies with Rapunzel and Mulan still being available in decks that would be running Moana of Motunui strategies. There's also the Ruby Moana that would be available for this deck, though that's a very situational card, and you might not be playing that necessarily. It would kind of be dependent on your play group and local decks that you're going to be going up against, and whether or not they're playing a lot of Tekka. Because Ruby Moana would be very good at removing that at the very least, but would be very situational in that sense. Ruby does also have several low-cost character options, such as Sergeant Tibbs, Courageous Cat, the previously mentioned Gaston, LeFou Instigator, among others, that synergize really well with Stitch Rockstar for some extra card draws when you're using Stitch's Adoring Fans ability. So Amethyst has some very interesting cards that can combo with Ruby strategies. One of the most notable ones you can play is Ursula Power Hungry. She can cause your opponents to lose lore with her It's Too Easy ability when she enters play, and you can draw a card for each one lore lost this way. So that makes her even stronger in a multiplayer game where you would have more than one opponent, and therefore you'd be drawing many more cards in theory, depending on how many opponents are in the game. Playing with Amethyst cards also gives you the options to play Anna, Heir to Arendelle, and all of the Elsa cards that you could possibly want to fit into a deck, including Elsa Ice Surfer, the Ruby Elsa, which has the That's No Blizzard ability, allowing her to ready and challenge multiple times or sing songs whenever an Anna card is played. And I think this deck has a lot of potential, the potential to at the very least be decent, as it has a number of options for controlling the board, which could be very good. So this is a combination that I discussed in detail in my last video, and I really can't think of too many more interesting cards to reference and discuss in depth to combo Ruby and Emerald cards together. I've already talked about the lore stealing options that Emerald and Ruby share, such as Steal from the Rich, combined with the Ruby lore stealing package. Other than that, there's really not much else I can possibly mention at this point that I haven't already said before. I'd recommend checking out my previous video on Emerald to hear a much more in-depth discussion and more information regarding this color pair. Ruby Sapphire is one of my favorite color combinations that I've seen so far with the first chapter. I really enjoy the concept of ramping and accelerating your ink generation to get to a point where you can place several big threats on the board earlier than you normally would be able to. And coincidentally, Ruby and Sapphire have a lot of these big threats to choose from. Whether you want to play Aladdin Heroic Outlaw for lore stealing, Tamatoa So Shiny for a more item heavy build, Hades Infernal Schemer as an option for removal, Maleficent Dragon also works here for similar reasons. Or if you want to play Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor as one of the strongest lore generating finishers in the game, there are many options for heavy hitters in these colors that can benefit from all the ink generating cards. Playing Mickey Mouse Detective and Grammatala Storyteller offers you some good options to increase your ink generation. And if you feel like you need more, Belle Strange But Special works as a ramp option, but also is probably one of, if not the current strongest lore generator in the game, capable of generating up to 5 lore in a single quest on her own, as long as you meet the condition of having at least 10 ink in your inkwell. And that's outside of using any other cards in your combo. This is just her by herself. She can generate up to 5 lore, and that is 25% of what you need to win the game in one shot. Ruby and Steel is probably the combination you would play if you don't want your opponent to have any sort of board state and you really want them to have a bad time. Between Ruby's removal options like Be Prepared for mass banishing, or Maleficent Dragon and Dragonfire for single target banishment, Ruby adds a few options to Steel's already enormous arsenal of removal options. Steel has Grab Your Sword for mass damage, Fire Your Cannons, and Smash for dealing single target damage. Tinkerbell Giant Fairy deals both with her abilities, and probably a few that aren't coming to me off the top of my head now that I think about it, because there's just so many and it's hard to keep track of them all. In theory, it would be possible to build a deck that is almost exclusively banishing all of your opponent's characters by using all of these removal options, and then you put in a few hard to remove characters of your own, like evasive characters, to finish the game. It would make quite an interesting control deck to do something like that, and I'm probably going to be testing that to see exactly how that plays out. So my final thoughts for Ruby are that it really seems like it's going to be a powerful color filled with interesting characters with strong abilities that are going to be very difficult to deal with if they make it into play. There's a lot of versatility and a lot of different combos that can be made here with the different ink colors. I'm really excited to see what people come up with. And yeah, there's also some really great art in Ruby as well. A lot of really cool pieces. I'm excited to see some of the foils once I can get them firsthand, and really can't wait to start building up that collection binder with some of these cards. They look gorgeous, and it's gonna look great flipping through the whole set once I can finally put it all together. That is the dream. For now though, that's all I have for this time. Once again, thank you guys for joining me. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to like and subscribe if you want to keep seeing more reviews and discussion about Lorcana. I'm looking forward to continuing this series with Sapphire next time. I know the series is winding down. I have a few ideas for what I'm going to be discussing after this and moving forward from here. So I'm hoping you guys want to continue with me on that journey. First chapter is releasing very soon here, and I just cannot wait to start collecting and playing games. For now, though, I'll see you guys next time, and I hope you guys have a great day.